Now, you know I just made a video called Feminism Does Not Exist. Now, to back up what I was saying earlier in the video, when I said that the comparisons between the white male um, wage gap and the white female wage gap is not that far apart. And I'm going to prove to you that feminism does not exist in the white world, period. Now, it does exist when it comes to white men versus all other women and women of color. And this article is going to prove it. Now, this article is from AmericanProgress.org. This is AmericanProgress.org. Okay? So you can pull it up. Now, listen, I'm going to let my computer screen reader read this for you. Okay? Now, remember, when it says that the wages is especially farther apart when it comes to women of color, that's letting you know that the white man is the standard, right? The white man makes more money than any men, okay? And they make more money than men of color. So they are the standard. They are the bar, okay? So them versus everybody else, just like I said before, them versus women of color, there's a big gap. But them versus the white woman, the gap is not that big. And this right here is about to prove it. Like I said, I'm bringing receipts. So let this computer screen reader read this for you.
Since the second half of the 20th century, women's labor force participation has grown significantly. 1 Women are working longer hours and pursuing higher education in greater numbers. However, despite this progress, significant wage gaps between men and women persist, particularly for women of color. So what exactly is the gender wage gap? What drives it? And what does it mean for women and their families? This fact sheet provides answers to these questions and more.
Now, you know what drives the wage gap? Because it said specifically women of color versus the highest bar, which is the white male, right? So they said, they didn't say white women, okay? They didn't put white women in the category. They said women of color, women of color especially have a big wage gap. So what this proved to me that gender doesn't have a damn thing to do with this. The wage gap has nothing to do with gender because white women are not even in the category and they are female. But they're not thrown in the category of a wide wage gap. Because you know why? Because there isn't one. It doesn't exist. It does not even exist. Only when it comes to women of color. And this article right here just proved it. See, people, the wage gap between women of color and white men has a damn thing to do with gender. It has something to do with race. Oh, yes, I came to cook. It has something to do with race. It has nothing to do with gender. Because if it has something to do specifically with gender, then why isn't the wage gap as big versus white women? But it's very big when it versus women of color. You know why? Because it's not about gender. It's about race. It has always been about race. It has never been about gender. That's why I can tell you with a straight face that feminism does not exist. It only exists in the minds of people and women of color. Because it doesn't exist in the white world. There is no wage gap. The white woman is doing quite fine. Matter of fact, she's doing better than you. The white woman is doing better than every woman in America. Okay? She's doing very fine. She's living in the nicest homes. She's getting the best education. She's living in the most affluent neighborhoods. Okay? She got excellent credit. No, feminism only dwells in the mind of people of color because she used feminism to control you. She used feminism to control women of color and to control minorities, female minorities, That's what she used it for, because this is plain as daytime that the gender gap between the white man versus every other woman of color has nothing to do with gender. It has everything to do with race. Now we're gonna read this one more time where you can know what I'm talking about. Now let's listen to it one more time because it's gonna alliterate and it's gonna back up what I just said earlier in my first video. Okay, part one, when I said feminism does not exist. Okay, it only exists in the minds of women of color. It does not exist in the white woman, in the white world, period. It does not exist. All white people are well taken care of. Let's go.
Since the second half of the 20th century, women's labor force participation has grown significantly. Point 1 Women are working longer hours and pursuing higher education in greater numbers. However, despite this progress, significant wage gaps between men and women persist, particularly for women of color. So what exactly is the gender wage gap? What drives it? And what does it mean for women and their families? This fact sheet provides answers to these questions and more.
You know what it basically means? It means that the wage cap has nothing to do with gender. It has something to do with race. Thank you for listening. I made my point.